name is Mark Smith. I'm the CEO and Executive Chairman of NioCorp Developments Inc., NASDAQ ticker symbol NB. We have a wonderful greenfield underground mining project and above ground processing facility that we're going to be placing in the southeast corner of Nebraska. We'll have multiple product streams coming out of there, including niobium, scandium, titanium, and the magnetic rare earths, including terbium and dysprosium, which are heavy rare earths. And today in the United States, we import 100% of the niobium we need. We import 100% of the scandium we need. We import about 75% of the titanium we need, and we import basically all of the magnetic rare earth oxides as well. So this mine is desperately needed in the United States. And we're not that U.S. centric either. We've got a very large contract, an enforceable offtake agreement with Thyssenkrupp out of Germany, where about half of our niobium will go. And so we are looking at helping the world, not just the United States. We had some very good recent fundraising, and we now have the money we need in the bank to finish all of our technical studies and reach FID. So we're happy. We're in a good place.
Mark, it's me here. Welcome to them.
Thank you.
Right.
Always a pleasure to be here, you know that.
Yeah. Look, good time to be alive if you're in the critical minerals space, right?
For sure. And the tailwinds are unbelievable. I've never seen this much momentum, and it feels like it's not just talk this time.
Yeah.
There's traction.
What does that actually mean in the States? Because people look to the States, lead of the free world, sure, but big market, big money. Typically, you're in the States, that's got to help.
That it helps tremendously. President Trump has already issued 2 executive orders concerning critical strategic minerals. That's action. His agencies now have to exercise the rights that they get under that executive order, and I can tell you that they are. I've been in Washington, D.C. 2 out of the last 3 weeks, so that we can start addressing what those executive orders are supposed to address.
Right, now you guys are kind of focused on the kind of slightly more esoteric end of the scale when it comes to the actual metals that you're pulling out of the ground and also processing, right? So but maybe explain to people what the use cases of those are.
Yeah, we have 4 product streams, so it's quite wide. But niobium, you basically add about 1 pound of niobium to a ton of steel. You can increase the yield strength by double. So any seismic steel, you're always going to have the high strength, low alloy steel containing niobium. So fabulous market for that, either infrastructure or architecture, either one. So when the public is doing well and they're building buildings, there's a nice market there. When the economy isn't quite as good and the government's building infrastructure, big demand. So it's a really, really nice market to be in. Scandium is a very unknown mineral. It's one that's starting to really get people excited though. Scandium does for aluminum what niobium does for steel. You add just a little bit of scandium to the aluminum. It strengthens it, it makes it lighter than aluminum by itself, corrosion resistance, and you can weld it. Aluminum is very complicated to do any welding with, so when you add that scandium, all of a sudden you can weld it. And just kind of think about airplanes made out of aluminum, and you have to rivet everything. Well, you're going to be able to use robotic welding and whatnot, which increases the efficiency of putting that plane together, lowers their costs. And we think that there's a huge market there for the OEMs of the world too. There's a lot of aluminum being used for chassis and strength purposes in automobiles. They can switch that over to use scandium aluminum alloys. It makes the car lighter, the chassis stronger, way more corrosion resistant. But that lighter body now allows that battery to send the car farther and farther. So this is a win-win for the OEMs. They get a lower cost material and they get more efficiencies out of their battery. Titanium is just a big commodity market, but it's used everywhere. I mean, every F-22 fighter jets for the U.S., about 80% of the weight of that plane is titanium. So I'll just let that speak for itself. There's a big market for titanium. And that's interestingly enough, it's becoming more and more critical because the Chinese are becoming more and more titanium oriented as well right now. They have probably 60% of the world market and a lot of the processing, the midstream processing that needs to be done. This is going to become the exact same problem that we have with so many other minerals, lithium and rare earths in particular. And then finally, the magnetic rare earths. Because of our metallurgy, we will be able to hydromet everything, and then we can selectively remove the neodymium, praseodymium together, and we'll turn that into an oxide form. And we can then remove the terbium and the dysprosium, and we'll put those in oxide form as well. But you cannot operate a sort of a high temperature application. You can't operate without dysprosium or terbium in the mix of that magnet, because without the heavy rare earths in there, the rare permanent magnet loses its magnetic properties at higher temperatures. So anything with EV, wind turbines, anything Department of Defense, jets, submarines, missiles, the smart guidance systems, all of these applications, including robotics, which is becoming bigger and bigger in terms of demand for these rare earth permanent magnets, they all require the high temperature application. You can't operate those unless you have dysprosium and terbium, and we have zero of that produced in the US today.
Okay, so a lot of metals there, addressable markets now understood by people listening, watching, and reading about this. Market cap today?
The market cap about 135 to 140.
Right, and I guess the challenge for you and lots of folks is to, when you're looking at your 2022 feasibility study,
yes,
you got a capex just over $1 billion, right? So you've been in talks. Tell us about where you're getting with, how you're going with financing.
On the commercial side, we worked that very hard for 4 or 5 years, and things just dried up in the mining industry in terms of debt financing with commercial banks. So that is what the U.S. government calls, they have a word for it, it's called additionality. It took me a long time just to be able to say that properly. That's a hard word to say. But we were the definition of additionality, which means you can't really find the commercial financing easily. I would suggest maybe we were the poster child for the word additionality. Because of that, we were able to start working with the Department of Energy and ultimately with U.S. Export-Import Bank. We are solely working with U.S. Export-Import Bank right now. We're through the first level of approvals. We're very far down the road with XM, and they've indicated a willingness to give us roughly $800 million in debt for this project, and that will likely be on a 10-year note with 10-year treasury rates plus some risk factor.
Okay.
That is the lowest cost capital I can get for our shareholders anywhere right now.
Right.
So that process is working well. We still have about $400 million in equity that we need to secure. We were very fortunate in the last 2 or 3 weeks. We did a capital raise, brought in $20 million. We now have enough money in our treasury to finish all the technical work and get to FID, final investment decision. That's a huge, huge improvement for the company. I don't have to go out and do the $1 to $2 million raises just to survive. We have money in the bank. We're advancing the project very rapidly right now. I would hope by the end of this year, first quarter of 2026, we could have our financing in place.
Okay, what's $1 billion get you?
It gets us the underground mine, and it gets us the above ground processing facilities for all of our product streams.
So all those lines through the same processing plant?
It starts in a single spot where
Right.
we do the hydromet, then we start taking the different streams off.
Okay, interesting.
Solvent extraction and acid baking and whatnot.
Right, I'm going to skip around sort of high level at the moment. So you got offtake for some things.
Yes.
Tell us about those.
Yeah, we have 2 contracts for our ferroniobium. One with Thyssenkrupp, where they will take 50% of our ferroniobium production, and that will be sent over to Germany. I'll come back to that in a minute, why that's important. And then we have another contract with CMC Cometals out of the U.S., and that's for 25% of our ferroniobium. Then we have about 12 tons per year of scandium tied up in a 10-year agreement with Traxys USA. It's the largest scandium contract known to exist. We still have a ways to go there, but we're working towards the UK car companies in particular, who seem to have a really refreshing view about how to use newer technologies and new materials of construction to make their automobiles even better. And so that's part of the reason why I'm here in London, is to go and visit those UK car makers. Titanium, it's a mess right now because so much of it came out of the Ukraine and Russia. People still aren't buying from Russia, so the market is quite volatile and quite chaotic right now. But what we're finding is that the U.S. titanium users, producers really are looking for a U.S. source of feedstock to feed their plants instead of bringing it in from the Ukraine or from Russia. So very, very open arm situation there right now. And then finally, the rare earths. We've been very, very public in press releases and everything. We've been working with Stellantis primarily as a 100% offtake partner for our magnetic rare earths. They obviously have a big need for their EVs, and it's interesting too because we always associate rare earth permanent magnets with the EVs, and yet it's unbelievable how many magnets are like that are used in the internal combustion engine as well. So there is a very good demand. It's very broad scope demand. It's a good place to be.
Right. Let's get back to kind of the offtakes and I guess the contracting turnovers, because I think one of the biggest things that comes fed back to us when people are watching these shows is like, wow, this rare earth stuff, the critical minerals, the pricing is so erratic, partly because of things like Russia, Ukraine, etc. China, one day we're on, next day we're off, so there's no is how do you align that erratic nature of the pricing with the contracts to give you the stability that you need? How's it work?
So kind of two different things I'll describe. One is for a very, very stable product like niobium. That's the most stable mineral out there. It's a wonderful thing to take into a bank and say, here's something you can look at and you can say, wow, that's a very low risk metal to sell. So we love that, and that's going to be really it's a volume offtake agreement, and then the price is just fixed to whatever the L&B price is going to be, Rotterdam or wherever we choose, and the price is so stable, you can actually do that. It's almost like a fixed price contract.
What's that as a proportion of your future revenues?
About 30%.
30%. Okay, it's meaningful.
And then on things like rare earths, where you're in a very volatile situation. I mean, 2 years ago, we were looking at NdPr prices probably 120, 150 a kilogram. Then they dropped to 45. Now they're headed back up because of what China's doing with the heavy rare earth restrictions, which are real. That is happening, and so prices are on the way up. What we've been working with various customers, including Stellantis, is the concept of maybe a certain portion of what they would buy from us would be under a fixed price that two parties would agree to, and you could have inflation adjusters and whatnot, and maybe the other half would be more of a collared approach where there's a floor and there's a ceiling. That seems to be okay between both the parties because we can get some upside. They can get that downside if prices go down, and it's very good for financing as well because the banks will look at the fixed price. That's easy. And they'll give us the floor price for the rest of the debt related to it.
For them to guess that.
And our rare earth production is really a byproduct stream too. So it's not something that we have the overall production costs that a primary rare earth producer would have.
But what are you saying? I know it's going to range, but what are you saying it is worth in terms of the dollar value of it? I'm the CEO of the company. I'm the chief cheerleading officer as well. And so my answer to that question is very simple. It's worth whatever the market will pay for it. Right. But as a percentage, like say it was a byproduct.
24% of our revenue.
24% of revenue in that sort of range. Okay, that's interesting. Let's go back to the stick with the money then. So things. Okay, we got $1 billion on like that, or so on the capex. Underground. What do we need to know about what you've got? What's that project look like? How do you pick it up?
We're going to use a twin ramp mining method.
But you guys discovered it, you bought it, or?
This is. It has a long history. The state of Nebraska actually did some magnetic resonance surveying with planes and flew over the state trying to see what do we have here. They found an anomaly down in the very southeast corner of the state, and did enough work to know that they had a carbonatite there. It's a geologic term, and in the world of mining, about 25% of all the known carbonatites actually are being produced today. The question is what? And in our case, when I first looked at the ore resource and the chemical analysis, to me it was a niobium play, as the primary.
Yeah.
And then through our metallurgical work that we've done with various firms, they've said, well, did you know you have, X, Y, and Z as well, and we can recover those.
Economic.
And
Yeah.
wow, I love that because they're all big, growing markets, very steady. It really minimizes the risk for our investors because we have multiple products, and that helps, because the mining industry does tend to go up and down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just don't see any possibility of all four of these minerals being down at the same time. So we should be able to really keep our finances in order once we're producing.
Tell me about this mine operating team, because we need a build team for the mine, and we need a build team for the plants. So talk about the people you've got on board now.
Yeah, this is one of the many things that I think makes NioCorp very unique. All right, so first of all, we have all of our permits in hand to start construction. You don't hear about that from any U.S. mining company. We have a very unique ore body that contains heavy rare earths. How many other projects do you hear about in the United States that have terbium or dysprosium? None. So then the last part is, well, do you have the right people to make that happen? Because rare earth processing, except for a very small amount that's done in the United States and a little more in Australia and Malaysia, it's basically all in China. And so there is kind of this sense that we don't have the experience, we don't know how to make rare earth oxides. My team is very different in that regard. I used to be the president and CEO of Molycorp when we ran the Mountain Pass mine. I've known the Mountain Pass mine since the late 80s. We have the people at NioCorp that I hand selected from Molycorp that know how to make and have made rare earth oxides.
Okay.
This is institutional knowledge in our organization.
Not too many people.
There's very few people that know how to do this.
Yeah,
I think it's very unique for us.
I haven't picked that up. That's fantastic, actually. Very comforting.
Yes,
indeed. So let's talk about that's the plant built. Operating and building are two different things, right? So does that team knows how to operate? Did they also build, or how do you get the build bit correct?
The other good thing about our senior team is that we've all done major projects.
Yeah.
As owners and managing your EPC contractors, and so it's second nature for us. But then what we're really excited about is operating that mine and that processing. So and again, I have one guy that has 42 years of making rare earth oxides. There probably isn't anyone in the world that knows more about this than he does.
Is that?
Well, I'm not going to give his name because then everybody will be hunting for him and trying to hire him.
Right. Okay.
It's a very, very good person, and he has the same values that all of our senior team does: honesty, integrity, do everything to the best of your ability. He just fits in perfectly with us.
Right. Okay. And what's the time frame we talk about to FID?
We think by the end of this year.
Okay.
And I'm pushing as hard as I can to bring it.
What are the long goals in the tank? What's going to hold you back, if anything?
On the this has all been public as well. XM Bank we're going through that process. They wanted some additional drilling to be done so we could take probable reserves up to proven reserves.
Okay, fair.
Whether that should be required or not is another subject matter.
But not a lot of money.
Not a lot of money. It's about $6.5 million out of 6 months drilling and report writing efforts. The goal of that is that XM would like to have proven reserves for at least as long as the tenor of the loan, so we need to have at least 10.
Fair.
When we're done with this project, we'll have 20 to 30 years of proven reserves. So we'll be as good as we can get at that point. They also, we did make changes to our process flow diagram, the metallurgy, which drastically improved the project as well. For instance, we'll get this is a small piece of it, but we'll get about a 5% increase in niobium recovery. We'll be producing 6 times the amount of titanium that we were going to produce, and we've demonstrated that we can recover the rare earth oxides, the magnetic rare earth oxides, at about 92%. All great work. We did a demonstration plant up in the Quebec area with our consulting firm. Now we need to take that, and XM asked this, and they're right. We have to take that demonstration plant data and all the work and convert it into feasibility study level engineering. So that is being done as we speak as well. That's been ongoing for about 3 weeks already. That's probably maybe a 6-month process as well. Once we're done with that and we have the feasibility study level engineering completed, then we'll take a look at that CapEx estimate as well. And I'm very excited for that work to happen, because right now we're just using a nice round number of 1.2 billion for the CapEx. But I can tell you that this process flow changes that we've implemented and demonstrated, I mean, we're going to not need a sulfuric acid plant. That's $100 million. We've changed the mining method, so instead of twin shafts, we're going to use twin ramps. We get into production faster by about 6 months, and it's about $188 million less CapEx. So I've got almost $300 million just in those 2 items. Now we do need to take the 22 numbers and update them for inflation, so there will be a negative as well. But I anticipate that the new CapEx estimate
will be different.
It'll be different, and I don't think it will be greater than 1.2 billion.
Okay, so you're working on those margins. Obviously, metal prices also helping at the moment. U.S. government, you've been in D.C. a fair bit recently. A lot. News I'm hearing out of there is the U.S. government, Trump administration, is pushing hard to reduce red tape, speed up the time at which, to still do things properly, but speed up the time at which processes like yours can move forward.
Correct.
Are you getting that kind of reception too?
The reception we're getting is second to none in my 44-year career.
Right.
We are welcome within these government agencies right now. It's been a long time coming. But it's really refreshing, and they are acting on things. They're not just talking about it. So very much appreciated. We're in a slightly different position because permitting is not an issue with our project and at our site. But financing is, and the White House and all the agencies that report to them are stepping up, and they want to help. They want to get through these processes. They still need all the right information, right? We're not gonna take huge risks with taxpayer money, and I agree with that. I'm a taxpayer too. So I like how they're approaching it. They're very commercially savvy, but things are moving. I mean, we have people working on our project specifically.
So let's talk about that, because a friend of ours, Mark Chalmers, energy fields, involved with uranium and vanadium, but also the rare earth side of things, which you both know a lot about. A lot of chatter on the uranium side, Section 232s being back. I know we've got one for rare earths now as well, back in October, hopefully. A lot of talk from the previous administration, a tiny amount of money, not a lot of action, which seems to my view of governments all around the world at all times. So why is it so different now? What's the rush?
Well, let me start out by saying that we started the XM process under the Biden administration. That it took us a while to get where we were when the White House changed. And what I mean by that is that the Biden administration understood the critical strategic minerals issues, but they were not in favor of mining. They just wanted to build processing facilities. And of course,
everything's downstream. Money downstream.
What do we feed it with? So you've got to have the mine.
Got it.
Well, the Trump administration gets both of those pieces. The Biden administration did towards the end of his four-year term. And so that's when things turned with XM, and we really started to move. With President Trump in there now, 2 executive orders that he's issued, it's very clear that XM needs to move these projects and get these supply chains back in the United States. So they understand it, they're prioritizing our work, and we're moving.
I think to rely on government money is a fool's errand sometimes. Do you see industry moving upstream into help mines like yours, help plants like yours, or is that just going to come through export credit agencies, offtakes, the usual conventional stuff? Are they going to take ownership? We saw that in lithium a few years ago, where people says, people come in there, talk about money. Will you guys ever see that?
We had been talking about that possibility with Stellantis, by the way, where they would make a strategic investment. We haven't finalized all
as
the
well
discussions.
As but
so it is possible. I think that my view of it, and I've been around for a long time, for the first 40 plus years of my career, there wasn't a steel company or an OEM that would even think about making a strategic investment in mining. They purposefully got out of all of those businesses and let other people handle it. All of a sudden, we're seeing, about 4 years ago, we started to see this introduction where people are putting large amounts of strategic investment capital into these mining projects. They figured out very quickly why they had stopped doing that earlier, because projects were getting delayed, project costs were going up. And an OEM, it's manufacturing widgets and cars. It's not mining where Mother Nature sometimes comes in and kind of gives you a different decision. So I think we've seen that kind of go to the side a little bit. There's still a couple of them that are fresh out there, and some lithium projects that are getting strategic investments. But that was a very hot flash in the pan, and boy, they backed out pretty quick.
I think lessons there for everyone, quite frankly.
And then the other thing too that I always found interesting was how many of the strategic investment concepts that we read about were actually binding, and how many were
headlines,
non-binding and headlines.
Headlines, so my favorite, letter of intent,
non-binding,
best. Okay, so right, okay. I had a whole bunch of questions for you, but as soon as you said Molycorp, my team's experience, they go out the window, because that is the bit. Execution is the key risk in all of this, right? So in terms of the underground stuff and the above ground stuff, I feel confident that you've been there and done it before. So really, it was just around that money conversation and how the timing of that. So we talked about timings at FID. In terms of the kind of build phase and the ramp up, what's that look like?
It's 3 years.
Okay.
We start construction.
Yep.
And then we'll go through a commissioning where you make sure all the seals are tight and the shafts are turning in the right direction and whatnot. And then we start production. Now, you don't start at nameplate, so we'll start slow and gradually ramp up. We've given ourselves a 6-month ramp up period to hit nameplate capacity. But we will be producing products at that point in time and selling products at that point in time. And our contracts that we have for niobium, that's an example, it covers that period.
Right, okay. And investors looking at this company, what are they buying into, really?
I think they're buying into an outstanding resource, number one. And, that I still remember some of my early days in the mining business when the old guys would come up and, hit your shoulder and say, ore grade is king. Well, ore grade is still king. You have to have a good resource, and we have a good resource.
Okay.
We have outstanding management team that has experience from zero to the full production levels, including construction. We have contractors that we've been very public about as well. Zachary is going to be our above ground facility. EPC. Dumas will be the below ground, and that's as good as you get in these fields. And we've been working with Zachary for probably 7 years, so they really do know the project. In fact, they're doing that feasibility study level engineering, because I didn't want to use one firm to do that and then hand it over to Zachary. So we're going to make this much more efficient. They're just doing the feasibility study, they'll go right into detailed engineering at that point. So we have the people, we have the resource, and we have all the other things that you need for a successful project, like a public. The local public out there supports this project like no project I've ever seen in 44 years. I think that there's in Nebraska, it's a lot of farming in this area in particular. It's a little distressed economically, and they're looking forward to the jobs that this will create, not just for themselves but for their kids, because a lot of them send their kids to universities. They get great degrees, become very smart, and then they don't want to stay in Nebraska because there's nothing there. They want to go at the computer firms or whatever. This will create a nice place where kids can specifically go to school for a subject matter and then actually use it at our operation. So all those things are pretty good. But I think a lot of it is just that economics. They want to see something new come into the area. We can do that. And the state has been fabulous to work with. We've gone through 3 governors now, going through this process, and every single one of the governors comes out strong handshakes and, what can we do to help you with this project? They've given us certain tax holidays and whatnot. I mean, I can't ask for more support from the state and the local people.
And it's made in the US of A.
Correct.
Okay, so thanks for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you.